The little boy came to knock on the door. Lao Tie arched his body and shook his hand very formally, but did not let go. He pulled him all the way to Yu Jizao's bed, a little flattering. Yu Jizao took a look at the little boy, but had never seen him before, and asked, "Whose little gentleman is this?" Lao Tie looked at the next door and said loudly, "A good friend I just met." The little boy stood in front of the bed, his eyes widened, and finally both eyes were fixed on Yu Jizao's electric wheelchair. He climbed up, twisted the handle, and actually moved. The little boy got interested and drove a lap in Yu Jizao's room in the electric wheelchair. He tried the brake and the horn a few times. The conclusion came out, and he said, old-fashioned, "My dad's car is better than yours." Yu Jizao glanced at Lao Tie, smiled, and smiled very happily. Yu Jizao touched the little boy's head and said, "Have you gone to school?" The little boy shook his head and said, "No, I am going to school after the summer vacation." But the little boy added braggingly, "I already speak English." Yu Jizao deliberately widened her eyes and said, "I can also speak English. Can you say something to me?" The little boy straightened his belly and recited all the 26 English letters in one breath. Yu Jizao was about to applaud, and the little guy has already taken the academic question deeper. He stretched out his index finger and pointed out very seriously, "Let me tell you that if it is Chinese pinyin, it cannot be pronounced like this. It must be pronounced as a o i u yu bo po mo fo de te ne le ge ke he ji qi xi zi ci si zhi chi shi ri." This child is interesting. Yu Jizao took a sigh of relief, exhaled happily, and smiled silently. The winkles all over her face were like a blooming chrysanthemum, all hanging on her face. Her tears came out. Yu Jizao applauded the little boy, and Lao Tie also applauded the little boy. Also laying on the bed, Yu Jizao felt that her legs were already standing up. Yu Jizao hugged the little boy, hugged him in her arm, and her arms felt real, really. Maybe the hug was too sudden, too hard, and the little boy was a little uncomfortable, so he pushed Yu Jizao away. Yu Jizao was not angry. She leaned on the bed, supported herself with her arms, and looked at him. This little guy is really a little sun. As soon as he came, the room was suddenly bright and became lively. Yu Jizao became busy. She wanted to look for food. She wanted to look for fun. She wanted to leave this little guy here. She wanted to look at him. She wanted to hear him. The little boy raised his head and said to Lao Tie, "You gave me the bubble liquid." Lao Tie wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes and remembered that he was here to play with bubble liquid. Lao Tie narrowed his smile and said, "I won't give it to you. The 29th floor is too dangerous, too dangerous." Yu Jizao said, "What bubble liquid? Give it to him. Don't you give it to the child?" Lao Tie walked to Yu Jizao, whispered a few words, and Yu Jizao understood. However, Yu Jizao got a lot of energy and asked Lao Tie to help her. She's going to the wheelchair. She's going to the earth. She wants to watch her husband and the little guy blow bubbles together. She wants to watch the bubbles fly into the sky like balloons and fly into the sky like pigeons. Yu Jizao happily came to the living room and announced loudly, "Let's go to the square to blow bubbles." The little boy's little face turned gloomy, a little listless, and said, "Dad is not at home. I will not go downstairs. Dad said it is dangerous outside." Lao Tie said, What is the danger outside? The little boy said, Dad said, it's dangerous outside. Lao Tie gestured and wanted to say something. Yu Jizao immediately gestured to Lao Tie with her eyes, and Lao Tie had to put his hand down. Lao Tie said, Then we eat watermelon. The little boy said, It's boring. Lao Tie said, Eat ice cream. The little boy was obviously hit. His face was completely upset, and he said, Just no to eat. It's boring. The doorbell next door rang at this time. A ding-dong sound was infinitely melodious in the aisle on the 29th floor. The 29th floor is too far away and too quiet. The little boy stood up and said, The tutor is here. I'm going to take the English class. Lao Tie and Yu Jizao were left at home, and the room suddenly became quiet. In fact, it has always been so quiet every day, but the quietness at the moment is special. On the contrary, it is like an accident. Yu Jizao had no choice but to look at Lao Tie, looking like seeking a word without words. But she didn't think about what to say. Yu Jizao only said, I promised our daughter that I wouldn't be mad at you. Instead, Lao Tie said, You should. How can you not be mad at me? You should. Yu Jizao seemed to be a little tired, but she was extraordinarily reluctant. Yu Jizao said, Let's go downstairs and blow bubbles. Lao Tie glanced out the window and discussed, It's too shiny now. Let's go in the evening. Yu Jizao immediately became irritable and shouted, You are not obedient, are you? You're not obedient, are you? Lao Tie laughed. Lao Tie smiled very charmingly, a bit bad, a bit handsome, a bit old and rude, a bit like a father, also like a son. Lao Tie said coquettishly, How can I? How can I not listen to my girl? Lao Tie put away the key, took the bubble liquid, and pushed Yu Jizao. Before going out, the phone rang again. Just as Lao Tie wanted to pick it up, Yu Jizao overturned her electric wheelchair. Lao Tie had to stand at the door and wait there. Yu Jizao picked up the phone and seemed to have only heard 1 or 2 words before the other end of the phone hanging up. Yu Jizao put down the headset but did not put it on the phone. Instead, she hugged it in her arms. She was lost. She glanced at Lao Tie but looked away from Lao Tie's face and moved to the bedroom, transferred to the wall, and finally stared at the row of quartz clocks. She kept watching. Lao Tie said, Little jacket? Yu Jizao shook her head and said, Little gentleman. What did he say? He said, The time at our home is broken.